side, and I am very happy to be joined by Neil David, who represents ICANN, and that is a very interesting organization. It is doing a lot to add value to the innovation ecosystems of both Israel and Canada, and it's an honor to have him on this episode of IICIE Insight. Neil, welcome.
Thank you, AJ, and welcome to all our participants. I'm happy to join this part in this episode today, and welcome everyone from Israel.
So I have not been to Israel, but I would love to be there. Of course, a lot of history over there, but a lot of innovation, which is my passion. Would love to be there, and I hope through our interaction one day, maybe I can come there. But why don't we start by you telling us about yourself, your own background, and what made you move towards innovation?
Great. I'll start with my vision of what I'm doing today, the vision of ICANN. ICANN is a strategic bilateral business development company acting in two main activities. One is non-profit activities, and the other one is for-profit activities, all to empower Canada-Israel relations. Myself, I am 40 years old. I'm a strategic thinker and design thinking, an entrepreneur with my soul, and love to see myself as half Canadian, half Israeli. And all my friends are always joking behalf of myself that I became so passionate about what I'm doing that it seems like I almost replaced my blood into syrup maple. Currently, I'm living in Israel, but 2017, 2018, I had the privilege to relocate myself and my family to Vaughan, Ontario, to explore the Canadian side, to deep down and to go and explore and learn all about Canadian history, Canadian culture, and the Canadian system. All that allows me to bridge between the two ecosystems, the innovation and innovative ecosystem, the Canadian one and the Israeli one. Israel is most fascinating area and a place to be, includes more than 4,000 years of history. All that is just an example for the experience led Israelis to be called and named under Startup Nation.
You know, it's so nice to hear that this collaboration is going on between Israel and Canada, and you are leading that collaboration. I know that yesterday you had an interview with Honorable Victor Fedeli. Could you tell us a little bit more about that before we go into the crux of our interview?
Honorable Victor Fedeli is Ontario's economic development and job creation and trade minister. And I had the privilege to host Mr. Fedeli yesterday to a bilateral webinar, which was all focused on Ontario-Israel relationship. And I call that webinar Israel-Canada Relations as a springboard for global success.
We believe this solid foundation will help Ontario's economy weather the storm and emerge stronger on the other side. Ensuring that Ontario is open for business is a cornerstone of our government's COVID-19 Economic Recovery Act. A centerpiece of our future plans is a new investment agency called Invest Ontario. It will be a one-stop shop for international investors moving at the speed of business to attract and service businesses from around the world. We're excited about the potential of Invest Ontario and the opportunity to share the province's unique value proposition. A great example can be seen through our world-class information and technology sector. Here in Ontario, we have all the ingredients to quite fairly be called Silicon Valley North. Some of the best and brightest minds call Ontario home. In fact, 69% of adults possess a post-secondary education. That's a rate higher than any other OECD country. Ontario's 44 public universities and colleges produce more than 42,000 STEM graduates annually. And 3 of the largest startup ecosystems in the world are located in Ontario, in Waterloo, Toronto, and Ottawa. Global giants, including Google, Uber, Sanofi, and Amazon, already call Ontario home. And there is room for so very many more. Let us pledge to continue the ongoing conversation between Israel and Ontario. The best is yet to come. Thank you. Thank you very much, Benda.
Because we share a common thinking and a common infrastructure to enable companies from Canada and from Israel to engage one with each other and from one side to the other side and vice versa, all with a strategic approach saying that Canada and Israel are the gateway for these companies to the global markets. And we have a lot of opportunities to take one company or a startup from one side to the other side to establish for him all the necessary elements to succeed in the other side. And from there, after maturing, going with a lot of free trade agreements Canada and Israel holds to another global markets, includes the US market, the Asian market, Europe, and others.
Let's talk about the Israeli startup ecosystem. I've seen that Startup Blink report on the current startup ecosystems around the world, and Startup Blink, of course, has members such as Crunchbase, Meetup, SEMrush, UN8. So a lot of good material they have. And I would definitely ask everyone to take a look at that Startup Blink report on startup ecosystems. And they looked at 3 things: quantity, quality, and business environment. What I found the most interesting is that both Canada and Israel are in the Big 4 club of that report.
Exactly. You're just touching a wonderful point. Thank you for that, AJ. This article and rank and others like that are ranking Canada and Israel number 3 and number 4 in the world for most friendly ecosystem and most friendly countries for innovation and startup. The 2 countries has established long way ago, and also in the last few years, and especially over COVID-19 situation, a wonderful innovation ecosystem combines great talent pool and education power work and employees, combined with a great infrastructure of R&D. Add to that all the necessary elements for with the federal and provincial elements to support that with grants and tax reduced elements, all that making the ecosystem, the Israeli and Canadian ecosystem, very attractive and very eye-opener ecosystem to the world. These 2 countries, Israel and Canada, are supporting the innovation ecosystem and the companies under that ecosystem in a multi-spectrum of pipelines and issues. Those companies can continue on with their work from day one till they go commercial or market or global markets, support them with a lot of needed elements, with all necessary elements that they can expand, make their work much more easy and benefit.
Yes, yes. So for my Canadian listeners, I do want them to get to know more about the Israeli innovation ecosystem. So can you tell us what are the factors because of which Israel has such a great startup ecosystem? How did it develop like that, and why is it thriving? Because I'm sure we can learn a lot from there.
I think it's all started, as I mentioned before, with the Israeli history. the Israeli history led the Jewish community worldwide to think outside the box, because the Jewish history was full with events led them to be needed those important skills of thinking out of the box, to be able to adjust themselves to new situations every time and every year, till they got to the promised land of Israel only 72 years ago. On 1948, the Israeli country was established. It was established in a unique geographically and politically area in the Middle East, surrounded with threats and not friendly countries at the starting point. All that with almost zero natural resources in the land they got in the Israeli country. Out of that, during the last 72 years, the Israeli community and the Israel state has developed one of the flourishing areas in the world. Today, Israel is ranked number 31 strongest economic country in the world, leading a lot of bilateral engagements, peace arrangements, including last week, arrangement of peace with historical agreement with the UAE. I think the main thinking of the Israeli will be how to make something flourishing from sand, how to make water out of desert, how to survive air by air of the history of the Jewish people, how to survive and to adjust to their situation and environment. I think that all started from history. The second thing will be what I mentioned during these few seconds, how you can do something without the necessary element on your table. How to make new development to solve global problems without even having the tools to do that. That's the secret of the Israeli community and the Israeli state. We can think outside the box. We can use our head to solve problems. We can use our hands to make something that's not available to be available. That's what we did during the establishment of the Israeli country, and that's what we are doing today in the innovation ecosystem. We invent ourselves each time from starting point.
Very impressive, very impressive. And of course, the results speak for themselves. The Israel innovation ecosystem has produced a lot of some great companies. Many we know, many we don't know. But a few examples I found was Wix, Fiverr, Viber, Mobileye, Taboola, maybe some more. Can you mention some more?
I think the most unique ones will be DiscOnKey, Waze, all those incredible innovative solutions that the Israeli mind has brought to the world is just another companies to your list, the list you mentioned right before. But I think more interesting will be the fact that Israel is number 2 country in the world to list Israeli companies in the US NASDAQ. So for so tiny population of 9 million Israeli citizens, and for such small geographic location, Israel is number 2 in the whole world for listing Israeli innovation and companies to the US NASDAQ. I think that's the big picture, and that tells the story and the impact that the Israeli innovative ecosystem can bring to the table. I think another important point will be that all Israeli companies, because of these elements of geographic and political place in the world, they are all built from day one to be global companies. Because first, the Israeli market is too small to gain revenues out of an idea. So you need to expand that to a larger markets. And second of all, because Israel was many years isolated in the Middle East, they all needed to go out furthermore to Europe, United States, Canada, and Asia markets from day one. That is something very strong in the establishment of new companies till today. People in Israel are thinking globally from day one. They don't just establish a company for the local market. They, from day one, think how that company will be in the global market. And that's unique issue, and I didn't saw that in many other countries in the world. I saw that in a few, but it's very unique to the Israeli environment.
That's very insightful. Yes, I totally agree with that. Many startups are built thinking about local problems and they are not scalable. And if a startup comes with an idea which is a global idea and are built to be global, then obviously they can succeed as a global company. Mm-hmm. So tell me, where would I go if I want to visit the best cities which are focused on innovation in Israel? What are the clusters? Which are the most important clusters? I know innovation is happening everywhere in Israel, but which are the most important clusters?
That's a wonderful question. Israel is so tiny, so in one day you can visit them all. But I think you can find interesting innovation clusters, of course, in the big urban areas. But if you want to find much more uniquenessity in the innovation ecosystem, the Israeli innovation ecosystem, you will go to the periphery and outside the big cities. There you will find unique niche innovation opportunities which you won't find in the big clusters in the big urbanic areas. But you can go to Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, Haifa, Beersheba to find big innovative centers, as well as if you go to the Golan Heights, Nazareth, or other areas around the Israeli country, you'll find many small, medium, and large innovative centers and clusters that you can find anything, any solution that you wish us to see.
So I know you're saying in one day I can go everywhere, but I think I'll spend, once I start discussing innovation with those amazing people over there, I'll have to spend quite a bit of time in Israel to actually understand all the innovation which is happening over there. So definitely all these places I have to visit. And the other, I think, strong point about Israel's innovation ecosystem is that a lot of multinationals are in Israel. They are there actually looking for new sources of innovation. And they are looking at the Israeli open innovation model to understand what is that innovation, what is that idea which they can incorporate into their products and services.
Right. Open innovation is a good point, because in recent years, more companies has developed open innovation in Israel. Microsoft, Google, IBM, all those companies understood the potential of bringing into their cooperates small ideas, medium ideas, and big ideas that can be linked to their technology, to their vision, without investing the R&D phases by themselves, they can get that and link that technology on the table ready to go from the Israeli ecosystem. That's why they open in Israel many innovation centers to attract those small, medium-sized startups, to fund them, to fund their R&D phases, and to take advantage of their development under the name of the big companies like Microsoft, Google, IBM, and others. So it's a good attraction for global corporates, and it's a good attraction for small Israeli startups, and that combination is very unique and very interesting.
It is very interesting. So I was reading up on why Israel innovation is so successful. So definitely Israel Innovation Authority is playing a very unique role, and it is making a very strong innovation culture which is there already in the country, but it is taking the steps necessary to ensure innovation is happening. And also there's a lot of institutions such as universities, which are also part of this ecosystem. And then public-private partnership is fueling innovation. Can you tell us a little bit more about all these three things?
Yes, Israel is lacking natural resources. We don't have oil, we don't have gas, we don't have water. But we have one important natural resource called innovation. So we reproduce out of nothing what we need. That's why everything in Israel connected to innovation. The infrastructure the government has set with the organization you mentioned and others to support the startup scene, to support the innovation, to support the R&D, to combine that to the universities and academic institutes, all that just to give the opportunity to make out of nothing something, to make something available. I think there are two more elements people in Israel have in their basket. One is their mandatory military service, which is a very interesting time for a young guy, woman, to expand his mind to other situations and other challenges in adult life. So the mandatory service in the IDF, Israeli Defense Forces, is also something open mind for the next generation to go out of the military service and to be much more mature, much more responsibility to his own adult life, and from there take it to another places of development, creation, and challenging and solutions for challenging. The second element, which is unique to the Jewish people, is the element of chutzpah. Chutzpah in Hebrew is when we are struggling with no fear with any challenge. We are using our chutzpah as a positive element to think outside the box, to solve problems without even taking any doubts that we can make it or cannot make it. We are sure that we can make it. That's why I called my company ICANN, because ICANN is not only Israel-Canada Strategic Networking, is just the acronym of chutzpah, the Israeli chutzpah, which I can do anything I can think of. I can succeed in any situation and on any challenge.
I believe that is the essence of the Israeli innovator, finding a smarter solution by spending as little time and money as possible and making it succeed.
Exactly, I agree with that. It's a true statement. And I think when you grow up with an environment lacking resources, you need to think just like you mentioned. Think how to do that fast, how to do things cheaper without any unaffordable expenses, make that robust, make that globally from day one, open doors, use your skills, use your environment. Those are critical elements Israeli innovation successful.
So let's talk about moving from a startup nation to a scale-up nation. Israel was definitely a startup nation, but earlier we did not see Israeli companies growing to a global level. But now more and more Israeli companies are coming out, and as you mentioned, they're listed on Nasdaq. They're scaling globally. So it has become a scale-up nation. How has that changed? Is there a transformation during the last 10 years or something like that to enable that scale-up nation?
I think of the last few years, we started to see the scaling level going to more and more Israeli companies develop themselves to a level of unicorns. And I think the attraction of the Israeli innovation ecosystem globally has made this small place called the Israeli country very attractive to investors, VCs, private equities, to corporates, the big corporates, the big player in the game is located in Israel. And all that pushes the Israeli companies, pushes the Israeli startup to scale up, to speed up, to grow up, and to make their innovation a global solution, and to be able to gap bridges between markets easily and to go with their solution to any market, to fit to any solution worldwide.
That's where Canada and Israel can work together to. Canada also, of course, wants to expand to various markets, and Israel is also looking for that. They can definitely work together. And we also have the Canada-Israel Free Trade Agreement, SIFTA. So definitely a lot of things we can do together. And that was something which you talked about yesterday with Honorable Victor Fedeli. Can you tell us how we can work together?
Amazing. Thank you for that. I think the combination of Israel and Canada, startup nation and trade nation, that's a winning combination. Canada is well known for more than 50 free trade agreements Canada holds with more than 50 worldwide countries. The combination of startup nation, the Israeli innovative ecosystem, linking to trade nation, Canada, can lead to a wonderful collaboration opportunity both for Canada and for Israel. We can grow up GDP one of each other, we can leverage innovation, and we can open new markets together. What I'm doing in ICANN is just that specifically, making a corridor crossing the ocean between Canada and Israel, taking companies and individuals to collaborate and to engage one with each other, all for making them more prosperity and making them ready to go to another market, to the global market. We can collaborate on many, many issues. It's a broad spectrum of interest and a common ground, from life science to cyber to smart cities to critical infrastructure protection to any other issue that can be found both in Canada and in Israel. The common ground is huge. The opportunity is huge. We are all open to business, but we need to take under our thoughts only one critical element, which is the cultural element. When we engage one with each other, We need to step into one of each other's shoes to see the reality from his own eyes, not from ours. Because if we don't do that, we'll never be able to engage and to collaborate properly. That's the place I can step into the game. ICANN is not only the corridor. ICANN is also the cultural transformator for Israeli and Canadian companies to be able to speak in the same business language, in the same innovation perspective. And that's very important for the businesses and for individuals.
Yes, so definitely a lot of things to do together and a lot of opportunities there. But tell me, what are the challenges here? Specifically, I'm talking about Israeli-Canada collaboration. You have mentioned, I think the biggest challenge you have mentioned is the understanding the cultural mindset of both Canada and Israel. But are there any other challenges which you are helping to overcome?
Of course, the main challenge, and I underline that again, highlighted that again, is the cultural element. That's the main obstacle. For more than 30 years, we didn't be able to recognize that. We missed that point. And by missing that point, our link and our engagement was in a low level. The other challenges are, of course, the language. English, French, Hebrew. Not all people in Canada know Hebrew. Not all people in Israel knows French. Less with English. So the language is a critical element, but you can bridge that very easily when you go into the other side eyes and understand what is in his mind. The second challenge will be the distance. Canada is a huge country. Israel is a tiny country. The distance between Canada and Israel is more than 10,000 kilometers. So to be able to bridge the distance, your idea needs to be strong enough to support the distance. It's not only the mileage, it's how costly that will be and how valuable it will be to take it 10,000 kilometers. Because each one of the sides have his own local markets to approach near his house. Going 10,000 kilometers to the other side of the world need to be very, very accurate. The other challenge will be regarding to geographic places is the timeline. Our clock is different. If you can adjust your work to the time differences, 7 up to 10 hour differences on our clock, if you can manage to work in the same timeline, that can be also something beneficial. And today, I think we got a big service out of COVID-19. The big service we got is the openness to engage in video conferences just like that we are on now. And these conferences, these platforms, video platforms, are flattening the world, closing the 10,000 kilometers, shortening the distance, but also gapping the time elements. We can adjust ourselves to work together, Canadians and Israelis in different places in the world, to work together and to work together also with different markets globally, using this wonderful opportunity COVID-19 has brought us, the technology and the video conference solutions to engagement and business engagement too.
You're absolutely correct. The world has become a smaller place and it is becoming more and more connected. And all that means there is more opportunities for innovative people. You mentioned smart cities, Industry 4.0 is there, automotive, the connected and autonomous vehicles which are coming. Also, cyber you mentioned. I think healthcare, fintech. So there are definitely a lot of opportunities. And one of the things which is there is, as you mentioned, Canada is a trading nation. Israel is a startup nation. They can definitely come together and add value to the globe. And I think ultimately innovation is all about adding value. Can you add value to yourself, to your clients, to the society, to the world? And definitely this relationship will add a lot of value. It has been a great pleasure to have you here, Neer. Do you want to close with some, some advice, some message, some recommendation on how we can move forward?
I would love to see more and more Canadian and Israeli icons, companies, startups, individuals engaging one with each other. It's a wonderful opportunity to benefit each side of his strength and to eliminate weaknesses of your side. We can do a lot of things together. We can engage, we can collaborate, we can go global together. We just need to decide on that. We just need to think how the other side feels, what he thinks about your idea. Sometimes good ideas seems good on one side, but needed to be cultural adjusted to the other side to be fitting the other side market. We can do it. I can do it. I can help you do it. And together with the network we built, together with CIFTA, Canada-Israel Free Trade Agreement, together with the infrastructure we built, we can take Israeli companies to Canada. We can take Canadian companies to the Israeli market, and we can elaborate and empower our relations together, Canada and Israel.
And thank you for your great work in this regard. It is a very important area you have focused on. And for Canada, as a Canadian, I'm speaking, thank you for that. It adds a lot of value to the Canadian innovation ecosystem. And I hope you and myself can work together to further add value to this amazing relationship.
AJ, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to speak with the audience today. And I'm looking forward to have you here in Israel. We'll go to visit a lot of interesting places and visit a lot of interesting sites historically and innovatively. That's the place when history and innovation meets, and I would like to meet you here as much as drink coffee with you. Thank you.